Hello everyone, I'm Deepa from Erode Sengundar Engineering College. I'm working in a chemistry department in Erode Sengundar Engineering College, Thudupati, Perundurai. Now I'm taking environmental science and engineering subject for engineering students. So let us discuss Unit 1 Ecosystem and Biodiversity. So here, first of all, you have to know something about environmental studies. So the word environment is derived from French word that means environment as nothing but surroundings. So the environment is defined as the sum of total of all living and non-living things around us influencing one another. And next, environmental science. Environmental science is the study of the environment, both its biotic and abiotic components and their interrelationship. So the word biotic is known by living things. The word abiotic is denoted by non-living things. And next, environmental engineering. The application of engineering principles to the production and enhancement of quality of the environment and to the production and enhancement of public health and welfare. That is known as environmental engineering. And next, environmental education or environmental studies. The process of educating the people for preserving quality environment. That is known as environmental education. Then there are two types of environment. One is natural environment and second one is man-made environment. The natural environment is characterized by natural components. All biotic and abiotic components are created through natural process. Creation of these biotic and abiotic components do not require any human support. For example, soil, water, air, etc. Next one is man-made environment. Man is the most important one. Compared to all living things, human beings is very special and most important. So, by using some developmental activities, the man-made environment is raised. For example, house, road, schools, etc. And then, what are the scope of environmental studies? To get an awareness and sensitivity to the total environment and its related problems, and motivate to active participation in environmental production and improvement, to develop skills for identifying and solving environmental problems, to know the necessity of conservation of natural resources, to evaluate environmental programs in terms of social, economic, ecological and aesthetic factors. Importance of environmental studies. That means by environmental studies, people will understand the concept of need of development without destruction of environment. Through environmental studies, people can gain the knowledge of different types of environment and the effects of different environmental hazards. Environmental studies inform the people about their effective role in protecting the environment by demanding changes in laws and enforcement systems. Environmental studies have a direct relation to the quality of life we live. Environmental studies develop a concerned respect for the environment. Next, ecosystem. So, ecosystem is a community of groups. So, that means all living organisms, whether plant or animal or human beings, are surrounded by the environment from which they derive their needs for survival. Each living component interacts with non-living components for their basic requirements from different ecosystems. So, ecosystem is the community or group of organisms. So ecology is the study of interactions among organisms or group of organisms with their environment. The environment consists of both biotic components and abiotic components. Ecology is the study of ecosystems. Ecosystem is the basic functional unit of ecology. The term ecosystem is coined from a Greek word meaning study of form. Thus, an ecosystem is a community of different species interacting with one another and with their non-living environment, exchanging energy and matter. So, for example, animals cannot synthesize their food directly but depend on the plants either directly or indirectly. So, biome, that means a small ecosystem. The kind of organisms which can live in a particular ecosystem depends on their physical and metabolic adaptations to the environment of that place. Thus, biome is a small ecosystem within an ecosystem. So, next, types of ecosystem. So, ecosystem that can be classified into two types. One is natural ecosystem, second one is artificial or man-made ecosystem. Natural ecosystem can be further classified into two types. One is terrestrial ecosystem, second one is aquatic ecosystem. And then aquatic also further classified into two types, marine ecosystem and freshwater ecosystem. And also freshwater can be classified into two types, lotic and lentic. Lotic, that means running water, lentic, that means standing water. So natural ecosystem, that means these are the ecosystem based on natural conditions. First classification is terrestrial ecosystem. So terrestrial, that means this is the ecosystem that related to land. For example, grassland ecosystem, forest ecosystem and desert ecosystem. Second one is aquatic ecosystem. This ecosystem is related to water. It is further subclassified into two types based on the salt content. One is freshwater ecosystem, another one is saltwater ecosystem. Freshwater ecosystem further classified into two types. That means running water ecosystem, that means lotic, and standing water ecosystem, that means lentic. For example, running water ecosystem, river, streams. For example, standing water ecosystem, pond, lakes. And marine ecosystem, sea and seashores. And second type is man-made or artificial ecosystem. Artificial ecosystem is operated or maintained by man himself. For example, croplands, gardens. And structure and components of an ecosystem. So here ecosystem is two types, abiotic and biotic. So energy can be transferred from biotic to abiotic and also abiotic to biotic. That is the interrelationship. So abiotic components is nothing but non-living components. So that means non-living components of an ecosystem collectively from a community called abiotic components or abiotic community. For example, climate, soil, water, air, etc. Here abiotic components further classified into two types, physical components and chemical components. So physical components, that means it includes the energy, climate and raw materials. And chemical components, that means salts and nutrients. So chemical components also classified into two types, organic and inorganic substances. So organic examples, protein, lipids, vitamins, carbohydrates, fats, etc. Inorganics example micro and macro elements. So second one is biotic components. So living components are living organisms in an ecosystem collectively form its community called biotic components or biotic community. Biotic also classified into two types. One is autotrophic components, second one is heterotrophic components. The autotrophic components, that means the members of autotrophic components are producers, which are autotrophs. They derive energy from sunlight and make organic compounds from organic substances. For example, green plants, algae, bacteria, etc. And heterotrophic components, that means the members of heterotrophic components are consumers and decomposers, which are heterotrophs. Then they consume the autotrophs producers. The heterotrophs are macro consumers and saprotrophs, micro consumers. So next we have to discuss about classification of biotic components. So finally, biotic components can be classified into three types: producers, consumers, and decomposers. So producers, that means these produce the effort during photosynthesis reaction without any help. For example, all green plants and trees. Photosynthesis, that means green pigments called chlorophyll present in the leaves of plants convert CO2 and H2O in the presence of sunlight into carbohydrates. Reaction is 6 CO2 plus 12 H2O in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, that forms glucose 6,6H12O6, that means carbohydrates, which liberates oxygen and water molecules. So this process is called photosynthesis process. So during this process, plants produces food energy and consumes food energy. So next, consumers. So consumers are the organisms which cannot prepare their own food and depend directly or indirectly on the producers. They cannot make organic compounds, but they can transform one form of organic compounds into other form of organic compounds. For example, plant eating species. For examples, insects, rabbit, goat, deer, cow, etc. Animal eating species, fish, lions, tiger, etc. And there are three types of consumers: primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. So primary consumers are sometimes called as herbivores, that means plant eaters. So these are the consumers, eat only plants, the small species. So secondary consumers, that means primary carnivores. Secondary consumers are primary carnivores, that means they feed on primary consumers. They directly depend on the herbivores for their food. For example, frog, cat, snake, fox, etc. Tertiary consumers, the secondary carnivores, that means meat eaters. So tertiary consumers are the secondary carnivores. They feed on secondary consumers. They directly depend on the primary consumers. Primary carnivore, that means secondary consumers for their food. So what is a food cycle? Producers to primary consumer to secondary consumer, secondary to tertiary consumer, or otherwise producer to herbivores to primary carnivores to secondary carnivores. And finally, third type of living organism is decomposers. So decomposers are those organisms which feed on dead organisms, plants and animals, and decompose them into simpler compounds. So during the decomposition, inorganic nutrients are released. These inorganic nutrients together with organic substances are then utilized by the producers for the synthesis of their own food. Example for microorganisms are bacteria and fungi. So meanings of herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. So herbivores are the animals that eat only plants, that is called as herbivores. Simply they are called as vegetarian. These are the animals, but these are vegetarian. So second one is carnivores. So carnivore, that means these are also animals but eat other animals, called carnivores. So simply these are the animals but these are non-vegetarian. So third type is omnivores. So animals that eat both animals and plants. That means omnivores are also the animals eat both vegetarian and non-vegetarian. So next, functions of an ecosystem. So that's clear. There are three functions in the ecosystem. So primary function or primary production, that means manufacture of starch during photosynthesis. And secondary function is all ecosystem is distributing energy in the form of food to all consumers or the energy stored by the consumer. Then third function is tertiary function. All living systems die at a particular stage. So these dead systems are decomposed to intimate the third function of ecosystems, that means namely cycling. So there are three functions. Primary function is a production of starch. Secondary function is a transfer of starch through food energy, and tertiary function is a cycling process. And then we have to discuss about food chains, food webs and food pyramids. So photosynthetic equation already we have discussed, and next is forest ecosystem. So all we know about forest. So forest is one of the most important terrestrial ecosystem in our world. Forest occupies nearly 40% of the world's earth areas, and in India it occupies only 19%. So there are 5 types of forest. Depends on the climate condition, forest can be classified into 5 types: tropical rainforest, tropical deciduous forest, tropical scrub forest, temperate rainforest, and temperate deciduous forest. So depends on the vegetation, forest can be classified into 3 types: evergreen forest, deciduous forest, and coniferous forest. So depends on the different types of forest. Tropical rainforest, that means these are characterized by very high temperature and very high rainfall. These are found near the equator. And the second type of forest is deciduous forest. Tropical deciduous, that means these are found near the tropical rainforest. Here temperature and rainfall is low compared to tropical rainforest. And third type is tropical scrub forest. These are also a forest characterized by dry climate for long time. And then the fourth type is temperate rainforest. These are found in temperate areas with adequate rainfall. These are characterized by some trees, pines, redwood, etc. And finally, temperate deciduous forest. That means they are found in areas with moderate temperatures. They have major trees, includes podleaf, deciduous leaves like oak, hickory, and animals like deer, fox, bee, etc. And some functions of forest. The forest occupies a very important role in our environment. Forest maintains climate and rainfall, and also forest characterized by warm temperature and adequate rainfall, which makes the generation of number of ponds and lakes. So forest supports many wild animals and protect biodiversity. The soil is rich in organic compounds and nutrients which support the growth of trees. Since penetration of light is So poor, the conservation of organic matter into nutrients is very fast. Structure and functions of an ecosystem. So abiotic components means non-living components of our environment, and biotic components, that means living components of an environment. So living component classified into three types: producer, consumers, and decomposers. Producers, that means they produce food during photosynthesis. Consumers, that means these are three types: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Consumers, they directly depend on the plants for their food, and secondary consumers, they directly depend on primary carnivores for or otherwise herbivores for their food, and tertiary consumers, that means these are directly depend on primary carnivores or otherwise secondary consumers for their food. And example for decomposer, bacteria and fungi. And next is river or stream ecosystem, or otherwise generally we call it as an aquatic ecosystem. So aquatic, that means it is an ecosystem that related to water. So water is also having very important characteristics functions. So it is a fresh water and a free flowing water systems. Due to mixing of water, dissolved oxygen content is more. A river deposits large amount of nutrients. So here is also we have to discuss about structure and functions. So here is also same abiotic components and biotic components. River also having some biotic and abiotic components. So abiotic component, that means temperature, light, pH, nutrients, inorganic and organic components. So biotic components, producers, consumers, and decomposers. And next we have to discuss biodiversity. So the word bio, that means life, and diversity means variety. Hence, biodiversity refers wide variety of life on Earth. Our planet Earth biosphere contains more than 20 million species of organisms, but of which only 1.4 million species have been identified so far. These species differ widely from one another. This variation in living organisms is called biodiversity. The biodiversity is defined as the variety and variability among all species of organisms and the ecosystem in which they occur in nature. Biodiversity is very important for human life as we depend on plants, microorganisms, earth animals for our food, medicines, and also industrial products. Biodiversity protects the fresh air, clean water, and protective land. It is also important for forestry, fisheries, and agriculture, which depend on rich varieties of various biological resources available in nature. So, loss of biodiversity has a serious economic and social cost for any country. Impacts of biodiversity loss. So, the farmers prefer hybrid seeds. As a result, the plant species become extinct. For the production of drugs, and also pharmaceutical companies collect wild plants, so several medicinal plants now become extinct. Tropical forest is the main sources of world's medicine. Every year, these forests disappearing due to agriculture, mining, and logging. So classifications of levels of biodiversity. So there are three types of biodiversity: genetic biodiversity, species biodiversity, community or ecosystem biodiversity. So genetic biodiversity, that means a species with different genetic characteristics is known as subspecies or genera. Genetic biodiversity is the diversity within species, that is variation of genes within the species. Within individual species, there are number of varieties which are slightly different from one another. These differences are due to differences in the combination of genes. So genes are the basic units of hereditary information transmitted from one generation to other. For example, rice varieties. So all rice varieties belongs to the species Oryza sativa, but there are thousands of rice varieties which show variation at the genetic level, differ in their size, shape, color, and nutrient content. And second one is teak wood varieties. There are number of teak wood varieties found available. Indian teak, Burma teak, Malaysian teak, etc. And species biodiversity, a discrete group of organisms of the same kind as known as species. Species diversity is the diversity between different species, the sum of varieties of all organisms at the species level is known as species diversity. The biotic component is composed of a large number of species, plants, animals, and microorganisms which interact with each other and with the abiotic component of the environment. The total number of living species in the earth are about more than 20 million, but of which only about 1.5 million living organisms are found and given scientific names. Plants species, apple, mango, grapes, etc. Animal species, lion, tiger, elephant, etc. And community or ecosystem biodiversity. It is the set of biotic components, plants, animals, and microorganisms interacting with one another and with abiotic components. The diversity at the ecological or habitat level is known as ecosystem biodiversity. A large region with different ecosystems can be considered as ecosystem biodiversity. For example, river ecosystem. The river, which includes the fish, aquatic insects, mussels, and variety of plants that have adopted. Thus, the ecosystem diversity is the aggregation of different environmental types of region. It explains interaction between living organisms and physical environment in an ecosystem. The next, biogeographical classification of India. There are various types of biogeographical classifications of India. First one is Trans-Himalayan regions. Upper regions 5.7 percentage and total area biomes are, and second one is Himalayan mountain, third one is desert, fourth one is semi-arid, fifth one is Western Ghats, and sixth one is Deccan Peninsula, and seventh one is Atlantic Plain. And values of biodiversity. So values, that means importance of biodiversity. So biodiversity plays an important role in humans' life. So biosphere as a life supporting system for the human beings. It is a combination of different organisms. Each organisms in the biosphere has its own significance. Biodiversity is vital for the healthy biosphere. Biodiversity is must for stability and proper functioning of the biosphere. We get benefits from other organisms in number of ways. Sometimes we realize the real value of organisms only after it is lost in this earth. Classification and importance of biodiversity are classified as first one as consumptive use value. So Biodiversity products have a direct use values where the biodiversity products are harvested and consumed directly. For example, food, wood, drug, fuels, etc. So food that means a large number of wild plants are consumed by human beings as food. Nearly 80 to 90 percentage of our food crops have been created only from the tropical wild plants. A large number of wild animals are also consumed by food and drugs. About 70% of modern medicines are derived from plant and plant extracts. So 20,000 plant species believed to be used medicinally, particularly in the traditional system of Unai and Ayurveda and Siddha. Third one is there are some medicinal plants. Third one is fuel. Firewoods are directly consumed by villagers and tribals. The fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, and natural gas are also products of fossil biodiversity. And then protective use values. Biodiversity products have obtained a commercial value. These products are marketed and sold. These products may be derived from the animals and plants. So silk is an animal product that can be derived from silkworm. Wool is an animal product that can be derived from sheep. Musk is an animal product that can be derived from musk deer. And tusk it can be derived from elephants, leather from wild animals, and food from fish and animals. So next, plant product. Wood it is used for some industries. Cotton it is also used for textile industry. Fruits, vegetables used for food industry. Leather is used for leather industry. Ivory is used for ivory or industrial works. Pearl is used also in industries. And next type is social values. So social values, the biodiversity refers to manner in which the bio resources are used to the society. These values are associated with the social life, religion, and spiritual aspects of the people. For example, holy plants. Holy plants are considered as the holy plants. Many plants are considered as holy plants of our country. For example, lotus, people, tulsi, etc. And also many animals are considered as holy animals. Cow, snake, peacock, rat, etc. And next value is ethical value. So ethical that means all life must be preserved. That means the species may be or may not be used for us, but their existence gives us pleasure. That is known as ethical values. So next one is aesthetic values. So the word aesthetic that means beautiful. So a beautiful nature of plants and animals that is known as aesthetic values. For example, even pleasant music of birds, color of flowers, color of butterfly. These are the aesthetic values. And next, option values. So option values that means these are the option. Searching, for example, searching a good species to cure HIV/AIDS and HIV cancer, that may be possible after some years. So it is called as optional values. And next one is endemic species. So the term endemic that means these are the species found in a particular area, that is endemic. So one of the important terms is red data book or red list. That means red data book contains the list of endangered species of plants and animals. The endangered species, that means these are the species but their number has been reduced. That is known as endangered species. So the red data book gives the warning signal for those species which are not protected. It becomes extinct in near future. That is known as red data book. So hotspots of biodiversity. The most important places of biodiversity is known as hotspots of biodiversity. In India, hotspots are Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. These are the most important biodiversity places. So Eastern Himalayas, which covers North India's, Nepal, Bhutan and neighboring North India's. And Western Ghats, that means which covers Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, which covers neighboring South India's. So next we have to discuss about threats to biodiversity. So threats, that means loss of biodiversity. So any disturbance in natural ecosystem, that means that is known as reduce its biodiversity. The waste generated due to increase in human population and industrialization spoils the environment and leads to more diversity in biological species. So any change in the system leads to a major imbalance and threatens the normal ecological cycle. So causes of biodiversity loss. So various threats to biodiversity. One is habitat loss. Loss of populations, interbreeding organisms is caused by habitat loss. So habitat loss threatened a wide range of animals and plants. Factors influencing habitat loss. First one is deforestation. The loss of habitat is mainly caused by deforestation activities. Forests and grasslands have been cleared for conservation into agricultural lands, resettlement areas, or developmental projects. Second one is destruction of wetlands. It's also one of the reasons for loss of biodiversity. And third one is habitat fragmentation. It's also main reason for biodiversity loss. And fourth causes is raw animal. So for the production of hybrid seeds, the wild plants are used for raw materials. As a result, many plant species become extinct. So fifth one is production of drugs. Many pharmaceutical companies collect wild plants for the production of drugs. Therefore, several medicinal plant species are on the verge of extinction. And next one is illegal trade. So illegal trade is also one of the main reasons for threats to biodiversity. So illegal trade on wildlife also reduces the biodiversity and that leads to habitat loss. And next one is developmental activities. So construction of massive dams in the forest areas discharge industrial effluents, which kills the birds and other aquatic organisms. And second type of threats to biodiversity or loss of biodiversity is poaching of wildlife. So poaching, that means killing of animals or commercial hunting of animals. So it leads to loss of biodiversity. Poaching that can be classified into two types: subsistence poaching and commercial poaching. Subsistence poaching, killing of animals to provide enough food for their survival, is called subsistence poaching. And commercial poaching, hunting and killing animals to sell their products, is called commercial poaching. And factors influencing poaching: human population, Increased human population in our country has led to pressure on forest resources, which ultimately causes degradation of wildlife habitats. And second one is commercial activities. Through international ban on trading the products of endangered species, smuggling of wildlife products continues. Since the trading of such wildlife products is highly profit, poaching makes the poachers to just hunt these prohibited wildlife and smuggle it to other countries. Wildlife products: ferns, horns, tusks, leaf specimens, herbal products. Wealth of wildlife. The developing nations in Asia, Latin America, and Africa have richest source of biodiversity. Importance of wildlife. The rich countries in Europe and North America, Japan, Taiwan, and some countries also have wildlife products, wildlife excellence. And third, remedies of killing, that means illegal hunting and trade of animals and animal products should be stopped immediately. That was the remedy for killing of animals. And we should not purchase fur coat, purse or bag in terms of made of crocodile skin or python skin. So third one is biodiversity laws should be strengthened. And third type of loss of biodiversity is man-wildlife conflicts. So man-wildlife conflicts arise when wildlife starts causing immense damage and danger to man. Under such condition, it is very difficult for the forest department to compromise the affected villages and to gain the villagers' support for wildlife conservation. Examples for man-wildlife conflicts. So, in many places, elephant kills a lot of human beings, and also leopards kills more number of human beings, animals. So, that is the example. Animals giving damage or danger to human beings, that is called as man-wildlife conflicts. So factors influencing man-wildlife conflicts. Shrinking of forest cover compels wildlife to move outside the forest and attack the fields and humans. Human encroachment into the forest area includes a conflict between man and the wildlife. In short, animals have a tendency to attack man. Usually, the female wildlife attacks the human if she feels that her newborn cubs are in danger. Earlier, forest departments used to cultivate sugarcane, paddy, coconut trees in the sanctuaries. When the favorite food of elephants were not available, they feed them to the elephants. But now, due to lack of such practices, the wild animals move out of the forest for searching. Often the villagers put electric wiring around their crop fields. Elephants get injured, suffer in pain and start violence. The cash compensation paid by the government for the damage caused by the wild animals is not enough. Therefore, the organized farmers gets revengeful and kill the wild animals.
For example, a farmer in Mysore gets compensation of 400 per quintal, but market price is 2,400 per quintal. Next one is garbage near human settlement or food crops near forest areas attracts wild animals. And remedies of and wildlife complexes, conservation of biodiversity, adequate crop and cattle compensation schemes must be started. Solar powered fencing must be provided along with electric current proof trenches to prevent the animals from entering into the fields. Cropping pattern should be changed near the forest borders, and adequate food and water should be made available for the wild animals within forest zones. The development and constructional work and around forest region must be stopped. And next is endangered and endemic species of India. So endemic species, that means the species found in a particular region as endemic. A species said to be in extinct when it is no longer found in the world, that is known as endangered. The endangered species said to be endangered, that means when its number has been reduced to a critical level. Unless it is protected and conserved, it becomes extinct or finish in near future. And next type is vulnerable species. That means a species is said to be vulnerable when its population is facing continuous decline due to habitat destruction or over exploitation. Such a species is still abundant. Rare species. A species is said to be rare when it is localized within restricted area or they are thinly scattered over a more extensive area. Such species are not endangered or vulnerable. Endangered species of India. A species is said to be endangered when its number has been reduced to a critical level. Unless it is protected and conserved, it is in immediate danger of extinction. In India, 450 plant species have been identified as endangered species. About 100 mammals and 150 birds are estimated to be endangered species, but India's biodiversity is threatened due to habitat destruction and degradation over exploitation of resources. The number of threatened species are in the table. Some endangered species are also given. So important endangered species: reptiles, birds, mammals, primates, plants. And endemic species. So the species which are found only in a particular area is known as endemic species. For example, fauna. Fauna, that means animals present only in a particular area or particular period as fauna, and plants present only in a particular area or particular period as known as flora. And finally, what is the conclusion of biodiversity? So from all aspects, biodiversity have different values in human life. It plays an important role in human lives, but nowadays, due to various reasons, biodiversity has been reduced. So the conclusion is we are in conservation of biodiversity. So conservation, that means, is the important tool for sustainable development. Enormous value of biodiversity due to their commercial, medical, genetic, aesthetic, and ecological importance emphasizes the need to conserve biodiversity. So conservation is defined as the management of biosphere so that it will yield the greatest sustainable benefit to present generation while maintaining its potential to meet the needs of future generation also. So next, factors influencing biodiversity. So biodiversity is generally disturbed by human activities such as construction of dams in forest areas, release of industrial waste, using pesticides and insecticides in the crop fields, and urbanization, etc. So, second is poaching of wild animals, over exploitation of natural resources, degradation of habitats, and affect biodiversity. The marine ecosystem are also disturbed due to oil spills and discharge of effluents, and the climate factors like global warming, acid rain, and ozone depletion, and some things are also affect the biodiversity. So advantages are a need of biodiversity conservation. So it provides immediate benefits to the society such as recreation and tourism. And drugs, herbs, food, and other important raw materials can be derived from plants and animals. It thus also preserves the genetic diversity of plants and animals, ensures the sustainable utilization life supporting system on earth. It leads to conservation of essential ecological diversity and life supporting systems. Since the biodiversity loss results in ecological and environmental deterioration, it is essential to conserve the biodiversity. So, types of biodiversity conservation. So, biodiversity conservation, there are two types. They are in situ conservation. So, in situ conservation involves protection of fauna and flora within its natural habitat where the species normally occurs, as called in situ conservation. So, the natural habitats or ecosystems maintained under in situ conservation are called protected areas. Important in situ conservation, biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, gene sanctuaries, etc. Methods of in situ conservation: around 4% of the total geographical area of the country is used for in situ conservation. The following methods are presently used for in situ conservation. It is the best method for the long term protection of biodiversity. Biosphere reserves. So biosphere reserves covers large area more than 5,000 square meter. It is used to protect species for long time. Some important biospheres in India are given. Role of biosphere reserves. It gives long-term survival of evolving ecosystem. It protects endangered species. It protects maximum number of species and communities. It serves as site of recreation and tourism. It is also useful for educational and research purpose. It remains and functions as an open system, and changes in land are not allowed. And restriction: no tourism and explosive activities are permitted in biosphere reserves. A natural park. A natural park is an area dedicated for the conservation of wildlife along with its environment. It is usually small reserves covering area about 100 to 500 square kilometers. Within the biosphere reserve, one or more national parks are also exist. Some important natural parks are given. And role of natural parks: it is used for employment through tourism, without affecting the environment. It is used to protect, propagate, and develop the wildlife. Restrictions: grazing of domestic animals inside the natural parks prohibited. All private rights and forestry activities are prohibited within a national park. Wildlife sanctuaries. A wildlife sanctuary is an area which reserved for the conservation of animal only. At present, there are 492 wildlife sanctuaries in our country. Role of wildlife sanctuaries: it protects animals only. It allows the operations such as harvesting timber, collection of forest products, private ownership rights, and forestry operations, provided it does not affect the animals adversely. Restrictions: killing, hunting, shooting, or capturing of wildlife is prohibited except under control of higher authority. And gene sanctuary. Gene sanctuary is an area where the plants are conserved. For example, one gene sanctuary for citrus lemon family, and one gene sanctuary for which is plant insects eating plant. And some advantages of in situ conservation: it is very cheap and convenient method. The species gets adjusted to the natural disaster like droughts, floods, and forest fires. And some disadvantages of in situ conservation: a large surface area of earth is required to preserve the biodiversity. Maintenance of the habitats is not proper due to storage of staff and pollution. In situ conservation involves protection of fauna and flora outside the natural habitats. This type of conservation is mainly done for conservation of crop varieties and the wild relatives of crops. Role of ex situ conservation: it involves maintenance and the breeding of endangered plant and animal species under controlled conditions. It identifies those species which are at more risk of extinction. It prefers the species which are more important. And some important ex situ conservation: botanical gardens, seed banks, etc. Methods of ex situ conservation: natural plant genetic reserves, and etc. And advantages are merits of ex situ conservation: survival of endangered species is increasing due to special care and attention. In captive breeding, animals are assured food, water, shelter, and also security, and hence longer lifespan. Thus, carried out in cases of endangered species which do not have any chances of survival in the world. Some disadvantages are limitations of ex situ conservation. It is expensive method. The freedom of wildlife is lost. The animal cannot be survive in natural environment. It can be adapted only for few selected species. So today we know something about ecosystem and their types, and also biotic and abiotic components, and also some types of ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems like forest ecosystems, and also river ecosystem, and something about structure and functions of an ecosystem, and some classifications of biodiversity, that means biotic things, producer, consumer, and decomposes, and also known something about biodiversity and values of biodiversity, some important hotspots of biodiversity, and also endemic and endangered species of biodiversity. So, at the conclusion is conservation of biodiversity. So, we are in a dead end, so we have to conserve biodiversity, otherwise we face real problems. That's why we all conserve biodiversity, avoids deforestation, planting more trees. It is not only a subject, it is very useful for our human survival, and also our truthful life and quality life. We need more fresh water and fresh air and fresh land, etc. So we are use all about all things, and also save and protect and conserve everything. That is the concept of ecosystem and biodiversity unit. So thank you all, thank you so much.